Hi. So I'm Sahara Witt, and this is Leland Zalinger. And today we're going to be interviewing Anthony and Tony Diller and Kalasek. Mr. Kalasek, I'm sorry. And we're going to be talking and asking questions about their personal lives and their time of service. So I would say, where and when were you guys born? So we'll start like at the very beginning.
Very beginning.
Like before dirt, I better hand the microphone over. Guys, I was born in 1986, born here in Chicagoland area, and yeah, that's where I was.
Yeah, actually, we're here substituting for the two people that are supposed to be here. We'll probably be walking in any minute, so we'll abandon the stage when that happens. I was born in 1986 in Carroll, Iowa. Not 1958. I'm trying to tell you when he was born.
I was born in a log cabin in Elgin, Illinois.
Who are/were your parents, and what are/were their occupations?
I'm going to let my dad answer that one.
I'm his parent, and I'm a computer system administrator. And my parents, my dad actually came over here from Germany and was drafted in the U.S. Army, and actually is now buried at the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery down by Joliet. And my mother is still alive, and she's living in Batavia.
My father was a carpenter, was also in the Army, and I am not a carpenter, but I am a teacher.
So I was wondering whether you guys were enlisted or you were drafted into.
I was enlisted 2006. I joined the military until 2011.
None of us up here are old enough to have been drafted, thank God. I joined in 1976 and served until 1980.
I was close. They changed the draft in 1975. So I wasn't drafted either because I'm not that old. I joined the Army in 1986.
I know some of you kind of already sort of answered this question, but in which branch of the military did you serve?
I was 1st Cav Army.
I'm the only Navy person that's been here all day.
Which is why I'm kind of leaning over this way. Army.
When you first joined, what was it like? Do you remember how your instructors were, the tone of everything was when you first joined?
All right, so long story short, they're a pain in the butt. They tell you what to do, tell you when to brush your teeth, when to go to the bathroom, when to eat, when to get dressed, when everything. That's how basic training is.
Closest mate, first class Pressler. It's a name I'll never forget. He was my company's company commander, what the Army might call a drill sergeant. Mean old man, but you know what? He knew what he was doing. He put us all through our paces.
Be interesting to see the Navy paces. Your first few days in the military, it doesn't matter what branch you are. We joke around with each other because we can. We share a common bond, and the common bond is really our basic training. So basic training is designed to help you forget who you were, to introduce you to who you are about to become. You'll notice a lot of your friends or relatives that went into the military and then they came back and you're like, wow, they're totally different, right? So that's what basic training does, is it breaks down the old you to replace you with somebody who is more able to follow instructions quickly, efficiently, and without question. So basically what it takes to do that is sometimes not pleasant. Oh, finally, they have arrived. We're probably going to give up our floor to the next two individuals that come in because to pay honor to Mr. Lexo, who is a World War II veteran, we want to hear his story. So we've just been trying to hold the floor here until he arrives. So you guys can talk to me anytime, right? Calsec, I'm always here. You can always pull me into a classroom. But it's very rare that we get a chance to listen to Mr. and Mr. Lexo.
All them bright, shiny faces. Hi, you kids. Like I said, I'm adult. What grade are they? That's right. The future of this world. You're up. You're up first. Up first.
Alright, would you guys mind saying your names into the microphone just so we can get a better bearing for those of us who haven't heard us?
My name is Howard Lexo. I'm going to be 87 years old in January. I'm a World War II and Korean War veteran, and I'm sure glad to be here to talk with you kids.
And what was your highest rank you attained?
I was a sergeant,
Staff sergeant.
staff sergeant, so I'm a little out of breath.
And let me talk. I'm his son, Lee Lexow, and I am an Air Force veteran. I was an enlisted man in the Air Force Reserve going through college, and then when it came time for commissioning, although I wanted to fly jets, the Air Force said they needed me to be a missile officer, and I said I did not need to be a missile officer, so I transferred to the Army as a helicopter pilot. I never flew for the Army either because I got caught in budget cuts, so I ended up as an infantry officer. And just remember, you might have a plan, but the Lord has a plan too, and it might not mix with yours. But that's where I needed to be, and I figured that out one day on a battlefield. That's where I needed to be. So I did 5.5 years in the Air Force Reserve, then I did 28.5 years in the Army, combined 9 years of active duty with it, and then the rest was reserve. And it was interesting because I did active duty early on when I was lieutenant to captain. Then I left active duty because there were so many budget cuts going, and if you survive one, you don't know if you're going to survive the next one, so why should you try and have a career with it if they're going to kick you out when you have 13 years invested in it? So you might as well get out and see what you can do and stay in the reserves, and that's what I did. I never expected to be recalled when I was a lieutenant colonel, but I was recalled for 3 years. Actually, I was recalled for 1 year, but I did such a good job, they kept me for 3 years, and would have kept me for 5 years had I said yes to another assignment.
So I was wondering what you guys were doing before you entered your service. Like, was it planned out that you wanted to be in the Army?
You take that.
I was in school. My parents decided we were going to move to Seattle. It was the end of World War II. And we moved to Seattle, and I looked for a job and noticed in the paper it said the Army Transport Service wanted people because everybody wanted to go home after the war. Well, I went down and signed up, and my parents signed and said I could go. I was 16 years old. I was afraid I was going to miss World War II. This,
So I'll take it next. You can answer the question. Did you want me to answer that same question?
You can, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I had graduated from McHenry Community High School East Campus. I was in the graduating class that started with Johnsburg here freshman year. Then we decided we didn't want them around, so made them build their own school. And boy, did we have a heck of a basketball team that first year we were together. I stayed here. I was in the first graduating class here in 1981. We stayed 4 years. I was bused back and forth because I had some advanced classes over at West Campus. And I went to college, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I started as a business major. Then the more and more I thought about it, I wanted to be a special agent in the government, like the FBI or a U.S. Marshal or something like that. So I did a semester as a business major and decided I would try something different, and I changed my major to basically a criminal justice, law enforcement administration thing. And then I found out I could go join the Air Force Reserve in Chicago at O'Hare Air Reserve Forces facility and become a security policeman, and did all the testing, and then found out they were willing to pay for my college too, because I had done real well with all their testing in their courses. So I continued on with college after I went through my training, and answered that question. We'll go to the next one.
Do you recall any of your instructors? If so, what were they like?
Do you recall any of your instructors?
Not really. It was a long time ago. That's 70 years ago. I have what is called sometimers. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't.
Okay, when I went through Air Force basic training, my training instructor, is what they call that in the Air Force, was Staff Sergeant Bear. He was also from Illinois, but he was from Podunkville, down beneath I-80. Well, you might as well be in the deep south there, or might as well be in Egypt, because that doesn't seem to be part of Illinois down there. But yeah, we called him. What did we call him? Sergeant Bear. What do we call him? Papa Bear. Then when I transferred from the Air Force to the Army, they weren't going to give me a direct commission like the Air Force was, so they made me go through basic training. And I had Sergeant Welser, Sergeant Welser, and Sergeant Estrella. And then I went to Officer Candidate School, and I had Lieutenant Colonel Orrin Salsby was my training, advising, and counseling officer. And they were all great people and taught me a lot.
Well, I was also wondering what kind of friendships or camaraderies you formed while serving, and with who, or how close were you guys?
We were close like brothers and sisters, and we fought like brothers and sisters too. But we all stood together. I have friends that I am still in contact with that I went through Air Force basic training with, and I have friends that I went through Army basic training with, and of course I have friends that I went through Army Officer Candidate School with. My father, on the other hand, he's close to 87, and the sad truth is most of his friends have already died. But he could tell you about some of them. I'll tell you. During the Korean War, he palled up with a fella that the Army didn't even have shoes or combat boots that would fit him. He had such big feet. And he was from Minnesota, or Minnesota as they say up there, and his feet were so big. Will Nimi had such big feet. He went through most of basic training wearing the improper shoes until they could finally get him some combat boots that fit. Dad and Will Nimi were very good friends throughout their entire life. Now, Will's been gone about 20 years, I bet you, right, Pops?
Pretty close.
Yeah, but every year we have an island up in Canada, and we would go up to the island a few times a year. But when we take the whole family, we'd make sure on the way back from the trip we'd stop and see Will and their family in Minnesota. That was his best friend from the Army. The guys that he sailed with in World War II, because he was Army Transport Service and he sailed all around. We encountered a fella, the kind of ship that he was on once, and it was a popular ship in World War II called the Liberty ship. There are two that still exist in the United States, and they're museum ships and they're historic vessels. And the John W. Brown is out in Maryland, and the Jeremiah O'Brien is out in California, I think San Francisco Bay Area. I took my father out there in 1999 or 2000, I think. 2000 maybe it was. And we were on one of the ships. Well, we went to the John W. Brown, and he was talking with one of the guys who was the chief steward on one of the ships that he sailed on. They never sailed on the same ship, but when ships would go out and the crews were on them, as soon as they got back, they'd swap the crews out. So Dad and the chief steward from this one ship, they knew some of the same guys, and they sailed on the same ships, but not at the same time.
Before I ask my next question, I should probably phrase it a little differently and say, were you on the front lines at any point in your service?
Most of the time. Yeah, I'm an infantry officer. Infantry means voiceless in Latin. And in the old days, the cavalry, we don't like those buggers, do we? And we served in the cavalry, but we do. I love the Cav too. But in the old days, who watched Downton Abbey? Anybody see Downton Abbey when it was on? Okay, so in the old days, a guy, a lord, an English lord like that, he had all the people that lived around him, and when they went to war, he had his cavalry of noblemen, and then all the peasants were the infantry, because they were the voiceless ones that were going to do the fighting with spears and knives, and then eventually rifles and bayonets and that kind of stuff.
We can't help it that we were smarter.
I bet you our GT score is higher, don't you think, there, Major Kalasek, don't you think?
I definitely know that. I sat through a couple of these with this gentleman already.
That's the fun thing about being in the military. And don't let us get started on his dad, because he wore an upside-down dog ditch on his head and hippie pants in the Navy. God bless him. Yeah, I was on the front lines quite a bit, and I have a combat infantryman's badge, which means I've exchanged gunfire with the enemy. Oh, lots of times, and unfortunately, I got to experience all the stuff that comes along with that. And I've had quite a few friends that reside in graveyards at this point in time. I was very lucky, for whatever reason, and I'm not the smallest guy in the world, okay, but for some reason, sniper that was trying to hit me, and he didn't even know me, he was just trying to shoot me, but he hit my pal Harry Witzke, who was a lot smaller than me, and Harry died. I used to not be able to talk about that. But time does heal, and his wife always tells me, Harry'd be going through the same stuff you are if you got killed, Lee. That he was your brother and you were his brother. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of that. Too much. It's not pleasant. Sometimes it's necessary. Don't do it unless you have to.
Lee, would you add, when we had dinner the other night, you told the story about an enemy soldier.
Oh.
And
We had an engagement, and it's rare that an officer shoots somebody because we usually have pistols. But I had borrowed somebody's rifle at one point in time. Actually, I gave my driver took my pistol and I took his rifle because I said, "You're driving. Give me the rifle. I'm a real good shot." And I made kind of a real good shot, and I shot a guy, and he was shooting at us, and we stopped, and we were there, and to put it in perspective, the one thing we try to do is, even though they're our enemy on the battlefield, we try to treat them with dignity. So he was there dead. I went and picked out his ID cards and everything, and unfortunately I found the family photo. Yep, I killed a father of two. He was trying to kill me, and I lived over it, but you don't get over that. And one of my soldiers then, when they came up to us, because I was on an advanced party, and we got real lucky that we were able to get that guy, because he could have wiped out my whole vehicle, but I saw him about the same time, and my rifle was a little bit better, my aim was a little bit better. But one of my guys went to sit on him to take pictures, and I tackled him just like I was a defensive end playing for McHenry High School back in the day. And my sergeant looked, "Sir, what's wrong?" I said, "We don't do that." I said, "Look at his family. Look at his family." And he got it. He understood at that point in time. Can't erase that picture from my head.
You already kind of answered my next question, which was, since you were on the front lines, like, what did you see? And I think we can all agree that you saw some pretty horrifying stuff that only any of us here can dream of.
I saw amazing men. Now, in those days, all infantrymen were men. Now they've let women in the infantry, and they can pass it. They need to be there. Okay, if they want to be there, they need to be there. But it's a brutal, ugly job. I saw amazing young men and women that are not much older than you, performing like rock stars or professional athletes, doing their duty. I saw guys that talked brave and tough turn into cowering little kittens on the battlefield, and I saw guys that were quiet become Rambo on the battlefield. You never know who's going to do that until the shooting starts, and you either rise to the occasion or you get them out of the way so they can't get any of your people killed.
So I was wondering, how did you stay in touch with your family and friends back home while you were serving?
Currently, we do it via the internet. Back in my day, we had letters. When I started, we had letters, and there was, being an officer, I had to do some stuff. I had satellite phone, too. They were just coming out in the early 90s, and I used satellite phones and stuff like that. And sometimes we'd get messages from, like, ham radio operators, I think, that people were reaching out to us. Now, my father was on a ship, so they didn't get mail until they came back to port. Right?
Yeah. And next question, in kind of a more lighthearted manner, what did you do for recreation when you weren't off fighting for the country?
Go ahead.
Well, I wasn't a combat soldier. I was an Army cook on an Army troop ship. And my job was to take troops overseas and bring them back and feed them on the way over. And we sometimes had USO troops that we brought over. And they entertained us. We had radio and we get music sometimes. And that's about it. When you're out in the ocean, you're really out. There's nothing else but ocean on either side, and in front of you and behind you. It's a lonely thing. I felt sorry for a lot of them guys. They were seasick. They were down in the hold of the ship. I don't know if you know what the hold of the ship is. That's where all the things are stored. Well, the bunks were 5 high. Can you imagine climbing up 5 high to sleep on something that is rocking back and forth and up and down, and you're seasick beside that? That's
Tell them about Australia. Tell them
oh,
about Hawaii.
yeah. Well, when you got into port, it was a different thing. You could go ashore and and get to see the country and that. I went to a luau there, and we had roasted sea turtle. And I didn't know if I was going to eat turtle or not, but they said, we got to try it. There's 7 different types of meat there. That was an experience.
Did you get an Australian girlfriend too?
Yes, I met a girl in Australia. She was a couple of years older than me, but she was, good looking. And there was, at the time, just at the end of the war, there was 10 women to every man there. And so it was a real palace of a place. And she took me all over the place to see different things. And she taught me not to call her by her name, but to call her Rolf.
Okay. All right. So for me, when I would finish up this stuff, and especially at Fort Hood, after we come out of a field training exercise, after being out there for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then go spend. Hey, what do you think? How many hours at the wash rack for a mechanized brigade? About 12.
16 to 18.
Yeah, you got it. And
Those mechanics got to stay longer in case the vehicle breaks down inside the wash rack.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then we'd go home and shower up and then go to sleep for 3 days, and then we'd wake up and we'd go out on the town and some of the places I went to. How did we have fun in Honduras? Did we get anywhere in Honduras?
We cooked a lot of chicken and beans.
Yeah, that was kind of it. A lot of times you try to go into a town and there'd be like a reception committee called ambushers waiting for you. And so we kind of stayed where we were. Now, luckily, I was Air Force when I was there. And I always joke when people say, why did I leave the Air Force to go into the Army? I always told them I couldn't handle all the pretty girls, I couldn't handle the air conditioning, I couldn't handle the good food, couldn't handle the swimming pools, golf courses, and the nice quarters. But so we had it made kind of a little bit better in the Air Force at the San Lorenzo Strip. If the guys weren't shooting at us every day, it would have been a nice place. In the Middle East, I got to take R&R in a town called Andaria the one time, and of course, being soldiers, we called it something else that rhymed with it, Andaria. But we got there, and unfortunately, the day we pulled in, going into a restaurant, we had a scud attack that took place, and so that kind of ruined the R&R. A lot of times, for me, when I could send my GIs away, and just officers and senior NCOs around, we'd sit around and play poker or dice games or something, and just get our R&R when the soldiers were out getting into trouble.
Okay, so how did you readjust to your civilian life after you served?
Very slowly. Life is never the same after you've done that. As my dad will tell you, he did not really serve in combat. He actually experienced some combat because in 1948, has anybody gone to see Hacksaw Ridge yet? Okay. It's about the Battle of Saipan. Now, my father was there 4 years later, and when he would have to bring meals out for the grades registration guys because we bring back our dead from a battlefield. And he was right by the cave where the big battle took place, where the Japanese were hiding out there. And he was shot at by the Japanese there, and a Navy chief came with submachine guns and hand grenades and said, if you want to stop them from shooting at us, they don't shoot at us every day, but when they do, they shoot. So they went up there and they threw hand grenades in there, fragmentation grenades, and then they shot machine guns into the caves, and then they threw phosphorus grenades. They never got shot at again. So whether the guys were out of ammunition or gave up or were killed, he doesn't know. But what did affect him, and that didn't bother him, but he would bring back the dead, and we're talking, what, about 11,000 caskets on your ship? 5,000. 5,300 caskets. And he'd go out there where they were processing these folks, and so he's seen a lot of dead. And it does affect you. But you just, you find out that the veterans organizations are good things, and you get your help through the Veterans Administration if you need to go talk to them. And you're changed, you know.
On the topic of organizations and things like that, and coming home, are either of you a member of any sort of veterans organization? If so, which ones?
He's in the American Legion. I'm in the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the American Legion, AMVETS, Military Order of the Cootie, McHenry County, Vietnam, and the Polish Legion of American Veterans. Yeah.
So what have you done since separating from the military?
Well, I died 4 times in April. I retired on February 1st, and 7 months to this day, I developed a hole in my large intestine, and was in the hospital for 6 days, and I coded out 4 times. And then they finally found the hole and repaired it. So I thought, surviving all that stuff and to die like that? Kind of crazy, but I'm here, I'm good. Can't model swimsuits anymore, though. I got lots of holes in my stomach.
So, how did being in the military and fighting and doing what you did, how does that affect your day-to-day life? And like, what is it like knowing that you've seen some stuff that you know other people haven't.
It made life easy peasy. Because any day you wake up and somebody's not shooting at you and your guys aren't dying and somebody's not screaming, and you're not shooting at anybody, it's kind of cool. But realize, the warrior's still in you your entire life. Because I can tell you, when I was up at the Wisconsin Dells the one time and some ruffians got crazy and started beating up some guys, there were only two of us. The whole crowd gasped, and two of us jumped in, and two of us took on four guys. They were beating up three guys, and two of us took on those four guys, and we won. And when the sheriff came and arrested them and said, well, you guys are the only two in the whole crowd, we were both combat veterans that were not going to let it happen. I mean, there was women and children there, and these guys were drunk and out of control and silly, but only two of us stood up in that whole crowd.
So how has your military service impacted your feelings about war and military in general?
War's terrible, but sometimes necessary.